Is Chevrolet Corvette the greatest racing brand from America? Well, it could be. In 2012, in the American Le Mans Series, Corvette Racing won the GTE Championship. In Grand Am, with the Corvette Daytona prototypes, it helped Chevrolet win the Engine Manufacturers Championship with those 5 Corvette DPs running around with the Vette bodywork. 60 years of Corvette racing and winning. Now, we're not going to take a deep dive, but just a taste of Corvette racing through the years. A snapshot look at each generation of Corvette from C1 all the way through today's C6, maybe a little bit of C7. And I'm not ignoring the current news. But you know what? Looking at what's going on, I'm going to wait till some things happen. For example, with Lewis Hamilton. Sure, he left McLaren to Mercedes. But I want to see what he does performing for the rest of the year and what happens next year when he gets in that silver car. I could have talked about the 2013 F1 schedule, which now has two U.S. Grand Prix, one confirmed and one not so much. Circuit of the Americas starts in 2012. And I could have talked about what's going to happen in 2013 at the circuit. You're going to have a Grand Am race, a combined doubleheader of WEC and American Le Mans sports car racing, and then the F1 race. But I want to wait to see that action happen. I could have talked about new cars. Hyundai, for example, announcing their WRC car at Paris, coming in 2014 to compete with Toyota and Volkswagen and God knows who else, and pulling out of all U.S. racing. But again, I want more facts. And I could have talked about my trip to Lime Rock for the Grand Am race, where the Grand Am officials got all insulted that I didn't show up with a drive camera, just like I did at ALMS. But we talked to them. Their attitude is pretty much on the same page of looking forward to the future. So let's talk about Corvette, because it's going to be all Corvette between Grand Am and American Le Mans next year. So it's time to take a look at what they've done. So today we're going to talk about Corvette racing, but before I do, let me get the suit issue out of the way. I've got a couple of business meetings and we're dressed to impress. And if you don't like it, please email me at subscriptions@gentlemansquarterly.com and understand what fashion's all about. Let's get to the Corvette racing story, because it started with the Daytona prototype thing that happened this weekend. They won the Manufacturers' Championship for Chevrolet, and Corvette and Chevy are going to make a big deal about that. But what I'd like to do is go back and look at their history, which includes how they won Le Mans with the production-based race car and all those ALMS championships. So is Corvette the greatest racing brand ever out of the United States? Well, let's start with C1. First generation Corvette from 1953 to 1962, and this may be the first Corvette race car ever. The car ran the Panamera down in Mexico. But the real story of the first generation Corvette was the 1957 SS Mule that Zora Duntov developed, brought to Sebring, and had Fangio in the car doing some practice laps. It evolved to the SS race car you see here, which got us to 1963 to 67 and the C2 generation. And the racing story here was really all about the Grand Sports. 5 of them, maybe 6, were built, and guys like Penske got a hold of them. Here's Penske's Grand Sport in the Sebring paddock. C3 Corvettes ran from 1968 to 1982. And the 2 racing stories, well, actually the 3 racing stories, caught my mind this way. In Europe, Greeter, I think it's Greeter, ran the Le Mans Corvettes. Multiple years, there was always that yellow car and a blue car. And actually, if you watch McQueen's Le Mans movie, you can see the Corvette pulling out of the start right behind the Porsches. In America, there was the Greenwood Corvette programs. First of all, production-based, as you see here, the car number 28, and then more exotic with all that batwing, wide fender shaping that actually Zora designed for John Greenwood in those Corvettes, and they ran IMSA GT in the US and internationally. And it all evolved to the most extreme Corvette. John Paul, his dad, the Sun team, ran this IMSA GT car, which had pretty much everything exotic and pretty much non-Corvette, but it was out there under that brand. That brings us to the C4 generation's Corvette, 1984 to 1996. And the production race cars kind of took a back seat to this Corvette Racing GTP, raced by Hendrick Racing. Not a V8, a twin-turbo V6, but mega horsepower. And a lot of people think this is a beautiful, beautiful race car. It kind of performed. It was always up front, 12 pole positions, but only 2 wins in its life. But it certainly got attention for Corvette Racing. From the production standpoint, Corvette built their own racing series back then, the Corvette Challenge Series. And here's one of the race cars. Becoming pretty good collectible cars, and certainly the launching point for a lot of named drivers back in that time. And Corvette Racing, the production side, actually did do some international racing. In 1995, a guy named Doug Rippey, a real Corvette racing fan, built this ZR1 with the Lotus ZR1 based motor, his version of New Aero, and took it to Sebring to race. Didn't do well, but developed it to bring it to Le Mans. It didn't succeed, but it certainly got people's attention being there. And back in the US, a company called Protofab built a modified tube frame GTO Corvette and ran an IMSA in that class, and I believe won those championships, which got us to C5, the 1997 to 2004 years for Corvette. And frankly, in racing, what everyone really remembers most is when the C5R raced at Daytona with Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Jr. in the cars. Now, I don't think the Dale number 3 car won, but it was certainly there at the finish, and everyone was paying attention to the great Dale Earnhardt racing a Corvette. And the stories go on that if Dale was still here, he would be running his own Corvette racing team. C6, the current generation, 2005 up to 2013. And we all know about the ALMS car. GTE championships many, many times, and repeated Le Mans 24 wins, because really, that's the focus of this program. And then in 2012, Corvette decided to spend some money at Jim France's behest to build Corvette bodywork. And they won 8 of 13 Grand Am races. But the chassis underneath is really a Riley or a Dallara or the Coyote chassis. But the bodywork is supposed to be all Corvette. The engines are from the Earnhardt Childress Racing Engine Company. They did the motors. They won the manufacturer's championship for Chevrolet. Does that Corvette Daytona prototype bodywork look familiar? Well, it kind of should if you've been following Corvette racing, because back in 2010, Pratt & Miller did a design study, an engineering study, for a Corvette GTP, which were to be the new ACO Le Mans rules for a category of car. It went all the way to a wind tunnel model, and I've still got the engineering proposal sitting in my files. Shh, don't tell. Which gets us to C7, the new car coming in 2014. Here's the jalopnik.com release of what the production car will look like, and as you probably know, and maybe have heard in an earlier shakedown, Pratt & Miller is working on the C7R as we speak, and I'm assuming the Daytona prototype bodywork will be updated to C7 look as well. So here's where I stop and ask you guys to weigh in. This was a snapshot look. I'm sure you experts about Corvette and racing have a lot more details and can fill in a lot of blanks about what went on with Corvette racing history. Sure, they won a lot of championships over the years, and there were a lot of race cars out there. Back in 1973 at Sebring, for example, there were a full 18 Corvettes running that race. But how well they performed and how much they really won maybe is a topic for you guys to discuss. And any details of great Corvette racing history, we'd love for you to share. And that's the bottom line question I want you to ask. Is Corvette really the greatest racing brand out of America? Or is there something else we should be talking about? On Friday, we'll get to some other racing news. And like I said earlier, with the big racing news, we'll catch it as they do things. Who cares about my opinion? Now, I'm going to go straighten my tie, go to work, make some money, and you stay tuned for Tuned.
Thank you.